All right, ladies, now let's talk about concealer. So, concealer is when we want to conceal something, right? We want to hide something, cover something up. And since we did some color correction already and our foundation is amazing, by the time you get to this step, there's not a whole lot left to conceal. It's kind of personal preference. Like, honestly, if I was just going to the grocery store or something like that, like, I feel like my blemishes and under eye circles and stuff have been covered enough. But if you're going for that full coverage, wow, like, fancy event, like, want to make sure your face is flawless, then we're going to talk about some concealer options. So, first of all, we have amazing color corrective concealers. Now, these actually have different colored pigments in them that will help with that color correction, even in this like regular colored concealer. So it's really awesome. Like color matching technology. I don't even understand it, but it works. It's really cool. So we have, this is light. We also have a medium and a deep concealer in these like skin toned colors. And then we have a white, which is really awesome for like brightening and highlighting. And then of course we have the green concealer that we've already talked about for color correction. Now, I absolutely love our concealers. They're really creamy. I've started using them under my eyes as opposed to the Shadow Sense, which I'm going to talk to you about, just because it is a little bit more hydrating and creamy and it just blends super nicely. But you can also use our Shadow Sense as concealer as well. And our Shadow Sense, as you know, is like super, super, super budge proof, which is why I like to use the Candlelight to cover some of my blemishes. Because sometimes blemishes, like especially if they're textured, they're just difficult. They're difficult to cover sometimes, right? So I really like that this is a little bit thicker to cover those up. Okay, so for like regular concealer, you can use Candlelight. This is Candlelight. Again, it has a little bit of peachy undertones, which makes it great to use under your eyes because it's going to cancel out like the bluish veins. We also have Sandstone Pearl, which I don't personally have that one. I have the shimmer version of it. So this is a shimmery version of it. So it's the same, but it's a little bit different. So that would be like for a concealer, okay? Now, depending on your skin tone, if you're deeper skin toned, potentially Mocha Java. I mean, it really depends on your skin tone. I'll admit I don't have a lot of experiencing color matching Shadow Sense for concealer for deeper skin tones, but I'm happy to help you figure something out if that is what you're looking for. Then, where I talked about white, how that is like a highlighter or lightening, brightening, you could also use Whisper Pink Shadow Sense under your eyes to help brighten, or Snow under your eyes to help brighten up. So again, you have a couple of options. So it's really, really awesome to kind of mix and match. Okay, so another question I get a lot of times is, do you put concealer on before or after your foundation? I used to always do it before my foundation, but then I realized this foundation is amazing. It has really good coverage. So sometimes I would be using more concealer than necessary when I would put it on first, because I'd be concealing areas that actually get covered by the foundation. So now I do the foundation first, and then I use the concealer over top on any areas that are still popping through. Okay, so that's what I personally do. Now, if your concealer, like if you're using Candlelight, but it's not like the perfect match for your skin tone, you might want to do it underneath. Our like actual concealers will match your skin tone a little bit better, again, because of those like color corrective pigments in it. So that's good to be over. Okay, so first of all, let's use Candlelight on some of these blemishes that are honestly kind of hard to see. So what I do, I just go in and I put a little dot over it. And like, quite honestly, like I'm not necessarily seeing any redness or anything like that like I used to. I'm more seeing like the texture a little bit, but you can't make a bump disappear by putting makeup on it. All right. So now you have two options. You can go in and you can kind of like just kind of tap it out. I kind of like tap around it to kind of blend it in. So go in and just using like really light. I always like use your ring finger is really good because it doesn't have a lot of pressure. On the rest of your face, it's not necessary, like super important, but around your eyes it is. So it's kind of just a good habit to get into using your ring finger for blending. You can also use a brush like this. Now this is what I use under my eyes. It's a setting brush, but you can also use that to kind of like blend them in, blend the areas in. I'm trying to think if I have another brush. Type one. Like this type of brush is usually called a concealer brush as well. So you can use that. I'm not going to use that because I actually use that for my orange and I don't want any orange on top. Or worst comes to worst, push comes to shove, and you don't have a lot of brushes, you can also use your foundation brush to kind of blend it out. Now your foundation brush is obviously bigger and it's not going to have as much precision, but you can use that to blend it out. So there we go. So now I've put Candlelight over any blemishes that were kind of popping through a little bit, but not really, to cover them up all the way. Now we're going to do under eyes. So my biggest tip for you guys, if you're trying to conceal your under eye bags, you kind of want to brighten them at the same time. I don't just conceal anymore. I like pretty much always conceal and brighten under eyes. So this is kind of like a highlighting step, but I do it at the same time, okay? You don't want to just conceal like in like the half circle under your eyes where your bags are. You actually want to go into an inverted triangle because it's just going to kind of draw the brightness like to this entire area and really make your eyes pop. So if you have really dark circles or you're like looking tired, do a triangle. Even if you're just doing concealer, putting it all the way down instead of just right here will help a lot, but especially when you're doing brightening. So I'm going to use the white and the light concealer. Sometimes before I had the white concealer, like I just recently got it, but I would use white or light concealer and Snow or Whisper Pink Shadow Sense, or you can do Candlelight and white concealer and kind of mix and match. Again, I really like the concealer now for my under eyes just because it's a little bit more creamy. Shadow Sense works really well as well. You just have to go in and blend it out really nicely, a little bit more. You can't let it sit because otherwise it's going to sit and stay there, right? You got to blend it out right away. So it's not quite as forgiving, but honestly, you don't have to, like, there shouldn't really be too much you're doing when you're concealing, so it's all good. So I put couple little dots, and you're gonna be like, okay, Caitlin, you're putting it where you just told us not to just put it, but bear with me, okay? And then just like tiny little bit of white, not too much. If you're worried about like putting too much on your eye, you can put it on a little surface and then put it on. Now I'm taking my ring finger and I'm blending the white and the like light together, and then I'm taking it into a triangle, but I'm not really putting a lot of pressure on. I'm just kind of blending them together and sweeping them into that triangle position, okay? A little bit more over on this side. All right, now this concealer, as it gets warm on your skin, it will really start to melt. So I kind of put it in the area that I want it. I do it in the triangle, then I let it set for a little bit. Sometimes now I'll go in with the Candlelight and do my blemishes while this is setting. And then I go in with this brush and blend it out. Now this is where you could use a beauty blender if you wanted to. They have the nice like tips on them. I used to use a beauty blender, but I don't anymore. I don't even own one anymore. I really like, if you're using a beauty blender, make sure it's damp because then it won't absorb the makeup. Okay, that's just a tip that I know. You can also spray this on your beauty blender, the Hydrating Facial Serum Mist. But I really like the setting brush from Real Techniques. This is supposed to be for your cheeks, I think. I've also heard it called like a highlighting brush. But it works really, like it's the perfect size for my under eyes. So now I kind of go into that triangle, I blend the edges, and I go right under my eyes. I am barely putting any, like I'm not pushing at all really. I'm just like running the brush bristles over this area, okay? And sometimes I'll take like the extra and I'll just kind of go over my eyelid, okay? And this just kind of blends everything one more time. There you go. Now my eyes are like super bright. Like they were already pretty concealed before, like there wasn't really any dark circles, but now that add of white really helped make them look a little bit brighter and more awake. So that's a really good tip for you. So now we have concealed. Now we get to do dive into more of the fun stuff. Kind of, we have now like done our complete base of our face. We've kind of evened everything out, so now we can start adding things to it. So it's gonna be fun.